Bata Manga.
I was a senior in high school when I happened to see my father at McDonald's. I had no idea at the time that my father would disappear after that. That day, my friends and I stopped by McDonald's on our way home from school, and I happened to see my father when he was supposed to be at work. I was watching my father from a little distance. Maybe it's break time? But he's not wearing a suit. What's he doing? And then...
a teriyaki McBurger set, a chicken fillet set, and a happy set.
he ordered. Which toy would you like?
The boy's toy, then.
Then a mixed-raced boy about 5 years old clung to my father's leg through the gap between the people in line, looked up at him and smiled. My father also, to the boy.
Wait a second, okay?
And then he put his hand on his head and smiled gently. My father and I were not particularly close, but I was surprised that my father, who didn't talk much at home, would smile so kindly at a different child.
Thank you.
My father then walked to his seat, hand in hand with the boy. The boy hugs the beautiful foreign woman of Russian descent and says, "Mommy," as the boy hugs her.
The waitress will bring it to you.
He said gently to the woman, and then my father and the woman sat talking as they looked at each other. My friends who had come with me had already finished ordering. "Sorry, go ahead and sit down, then eat. I'll be right there." And then I approached my father and the two of them eating together in harmony. "Hey, Dad, what are you doing here?" Then my father spits out the coffee he was drinking all over the foreign woman sitting in front of him. "Oh my God!" the woman said and began to hastily wipe the coffee, and my father tried to say something to me. But he was stumbling on the spot because he was also concerned about the woman. Then the kid. "Who is this woman? Is it Dad's friend?" he asked my father, pointing at me. At that moment, my father and I froze, not grasping the situation. My father opened his mouth first.
This is not what you think.
I took my father's coffee and took the lid off and splashed it in his face. "You're the worst, jerk!" and walked away from the scene with those lines. I texted my friends, "I don't feel so good, so I'm going home," and then went home. They asked me if I was okay, and I told them that I was fine, but I wasn't okay at all. I walked home, feeling dizzy for a while, as if I had been hit in the head with a blunt instrument. Ugh, that asshole! My father did not return home that night, and my mother was worried all night. He won't answer his phone and he doesn't reply to my texts. I wonder if he's involved in some kind of crime. I'm thinking of calling the police. She started saying so. Let's wait a little longer. Maybe he'll come back in the morning. And stopped my mother. But when he didn't come home the next morning, my mother, unable to stand it, called his office. And to her surprise,
Tanabata-san has been on paid leave since yesterday.
she was told. My mother was speechless. After that, we contacted my father's acquaintances and relatives to ask about his whereabouts, but in the end, we were unable to locate him. When it came time to file a police report, I told them everything that happened at McDonald's the other day. "Oh, honey, why didn't you tell me sooner?" "How was I supposed to tell you? I was shocked too. And I didn't even check to see what the relationship was, so I couldn't say anything rash." "Right, but thank you for telling me." I could see a few tears in my mother's eyes as she said that. Then my mother stayed strong for a while, but she was very depressed and cried quietly at night. My father never came home after that day at McDonald's. Suddenly a single mother, my mother changed from a part-time job to a full-time job, and I started working part-time on my days off.
Sis.
It's okay. I won't give up. I postponed my plans to go to a technical school after high school for 2 years to save money on my own. I gave part of my money from my part-time job to my mom and saved the rest to pay for technical school. Finally, 3 years have passed since then when my father suddenly came home. He got down on his knees at the entrance to the house to everyone who was stunned.
Sign the divorce papers and the documents regarding the relinquishment of my inheritance,
he said. My mother asked him what he meant, and he said something about wanting to give all of his property to a mixed-race child. My mother was so furious, she pulled his hair, lifted his face up, and hit him as hard as she could. Don't play with me. Do you have any idea what we've been through? Get the hell out of here. She shouted at my father in a rage I had never heard my mother utter before. My brother and I backed her up. No one was on my father's side anymore, and he continued to get down on his knees with a bloody nose.
Please, sign this. If you don't sign this, she's going to leave me. I'll pay you alimony. Please sign the divorce papers and give up the inheritance.
Father begged and pleaded as he was beaten, and every time he begged, my mother beat him. My father was a wealthy man, or rather, my grandfather had made a good fortune during the bubble years, and he still had the rest of it. He said he would pay alimony, but considering the rates, the amount of money received would be different between the alimony and the inheritance. And my father...
My own children have the right to the inheritance even if I'm divorced. So if I die, I'm in trouble because I have to get the consent of all the heirs and stuff like that.
He said something like that. I felt like killing him when I heard that. Also, I found out that my father actually had cancer. Just 6 months ago. He was not feeling well, so he went to the hospital and they told him he had cancer. So it seems that the affair was the intention that the son would inherit all of my father's assets when he died. If you can't give the whole inheritance to my son, I'll leave you right now. Apparently, she told him. He wanted to spend the rest of his short, possibly life, with a beautiful foreign woman and a cute little mixed-race child. When my mother heard that, what an idiot! I hope you pass from this cancer and cross the rivers of death. She was outraged. Afterwards, my mother and father had a proper discussion about the divorce. But my mother said, "It's no use talking to him," and was angry. After a series of negotiations, my mother decided to sign the documents relinquishing her inheritance. He was to pay alimony, considerably higher than the market rate, and child support for me and my brother for 3 years he was missing. Plus, the cost of my technical schooling until graduation and my brother's future college expenses. He took out some of my grandfather's inheritance and my father paid my mother in a lump sum. My brother, who was headed off to college,
Now I can go without any worries.
He was overjoyed. I'm also relieved that I don't have to work part-time anymore, so I can finally focus on my schoolwork. After that woman became angry with my father because he gave my mother a large amount of assets as alimony without telling her. When she received the rest of his inheritance from him, she apparently took his son back to the country without telling him when he was hospitalized for cancer treatment. Rose Fijania, goodbye. I don't know what happened to him after that. He probably died alone. He got what he deserved. My mother laughed hysterically. My mother crying quietly for some time after my father disappeared may have just been my hallucination. But how could he ask us to give the inheritance when he's the one who should be giving it up and apologizing? My father is really pathetic.
Thank you for watching all the way to the end. What did you think of today's episode? Leave a comment and let me know your thoughts on today's story. And if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe!